Thank you for making a switch in our location. Ted, thank you as always for welcoming or opening your room for our faculty meetings. This is our official first faculty meeting of the year. We're all excited, I can tell. Yeah. And I just love being on camera because I did such a great job with, modeling the toggling and all that. And I love seeing how I look on video because they always say that you lose 20 pounds on video, right? So I was so excited to do it again that I just want you to know that should you happen to miss faculty meeting, which I'm talking to all of you who aren't missing it, we're videotaping them now. So those of you who missed get to see the actual faculty meeting. So coaches, or if you happen to have a day where you're absent on a faculty meeting, we'll get to make those up. And there's too much of good stuff. I know I'm teasing about the video part, but there's too much great work that we do together that people are missing because they're doing other great things for our school, or they have a sick day or a personal day. So if you see Loretta videotaping us, that's why. I sent out the agenda, and just something that we use at administrative notes, administrative meetings is, it's a knockoff of the Cornell notes, but sometimes there's not enough room next to what we talk about, so that's what that's for. If you're electronic and it's all on your tablet, feel free to do that. But you notice that we really have two big items to address today and then some informational items. So our first one is our continued work about PLCs. We started that actually at mini retreat when we got to hear some of the great things that our content lead and team leaders learned when they went to their leadership institute, which was all about making our PLCs effective. And then on our teaming day, we spent an hour and a half together about what are the components of PLCs. So we're going to just continue our work and looking at where are we today. And so Sarah's going to turn that over. I'll turn that over to Sarah, and she's going to continue that work this afternoon. So Sarah?
Equally excited about the video camera.
Rich, right.
Gregors, what's up? How are you? They're football right now. Also, I'm just really happy that we're all in one piece after the tornado and earthquake. That was intense. To have both those drills. So here we are, we're back, we're ready. Ready to do some work for about the next hour on, as Carrie said, PLCs and ILTs and whatever other alphabet soup you want to throw in there with all of that, our educational jargon. Thinking a lot about impact, like the impact that we have. Do you ever feel like you wonder if some of the things that you do can make an impact? Whether it's in your personal life, like does it really matter that I take the time to make the homemade lunches for my kids? Or professionally, like does it really matter that I come in patient when there are just, the two of us every Tuesday and Thursday when we sit down? Like what does that really look like? Okay, so that's our first outcome. And then our second outcome would be to consider that there are essential pieces of a PLC that involve things like curriculum analysis and things like planning. It's not like you can just ignore that other stuff. So what's the balance of essential PLC components when, again, it's just the two of us, it's just the three of us, week to week, day to day? Want to bring back in your frame of reference this idea of the flipped 5 questions. Really, it's just that flipped second and third. This is the revised order where you'll see that as a PLC, we focus on curriculum. You've got to know your curriculum first. Have to start there with the framework analysis. But then moving into assessment. So how will we know what our kids know? And then engagement. How will we make sure that they are plugged in and learning through best practice? And then intervention. What do we do when they don't get it? And then finally enrichment and acceleration. What if they got it 4 days ago? What then? But just keep in mind that slightly flipped order with the assessment and the engagement. You remember before school started, we talked about these 3 essential components of an effectively functioning PLC. And it has to include all 3, right? You have to have some curriculum analysis and framework talk. You have to have some planning for instruction. But what we all agreed on, and we said this way back May 17th last year, all of us, on Notes Day, was that we're not doing as good a job with the data and the student work analysis. And so how do we bring that back without losing everything else? How do we make a place and make time and make space for all of it? So that's where we are today. So if you'll remember, I gave you a pink sheet before we started school. The guidance for data and student work analysis for same course PLCs has two sections, this sheet. So if you will put it in front of you, just take a minute. If you don't have a copy, I've got some extras up on the desk up there. Just grab one. Take like 1 minute, skim through the two pieces of this document. One deals with data, and one deals with what we would consider more like student work. So I'm going to give you just a minute to skim through this document.
This one?
Just a few more seconds to finish up. Okay, remember we said that, look, there are lots of really great protocols out there, but a lot of those take, up to an hour, and typically sort of call for more than 2 to 3 people around the table. Like that's kind of how they're structured. So what do you do when that's not what your time frame or what your group looks like? So we put this together as kind of like a little cheat sheet. But then content leaders and team leaders, as we sat and talked at the institute that we attended, we kept saying things like, gosh, it would be great if we could see this. Gosh, it would be great if somebody could give us an example. Gosh, it would be great if there was a video or something out there. Until it kind of occurred to all of us that like, we don't need a video, and we've got multiple examples of what that can look like here in our very own building. So how great would it be to ask a small group, same course colleague, PLC, to sort of model this for us in a very real world, real time, not rehearsed setting. So that's what we have prepared for you today. We're going to do a fishbowl. We are going to get up and move into the reading room, mainly because the acoustics are better in there, and you'll be able to hear people sitting around a table a little bit better. There are a few chairs in there. We're going to let the PLC sit at the table. The rest of us can pull whatever chairs are around, or just stand around that group at the table, because it's not going to last that long. But we are going to ask you to listen, observe, and take some notes, okay? We would like for you to use a note, just the noticings and wonderings, 2-column chart. So you'll take this with you. So this sheet's something to write with, maybe a notebook if you need something like to put underneath it, give you some sturdy space to write. But we're simply going to ask that as you watch this fishbowl, you're going to make some observations. You're going to write down direct quotes. What did you hear people saying? Write down the direct quote. What did you hear that you might be able to count? Like, I heard this 3 times, or this person looked at 4 pieces of work, or whatever. What might be attributed to a number? What can you point to? And then there's the wonderings column. What questions do you have? What do you still not get? What was kind of unclear in what they were talking about, because maybe we don't have the same background knowledge as the same PLC? What schema do I have that's lacking that needs to be filled in? And then notice the work. What is it they're looking at? Notice what the work looks like and what it is. Notice the process they use, and constantly ask yourself why as you're taking notes on this 2-column chart. Constantly ask yourself why. See if you can answer that. Or ask why. Okay? Questions? All right, the PLC who we asked to model this process for us is 7th grade social studies. So we're going to let you guys go on, grab that table that's over here toward the left. And then, as I said, the rest of us will gather around them. What questions do you have about the process before we move? Awesome. Let's go. minute, we're gonna let Alex give us a little bit of context. So this is like not into the actual real-time model. So she's gonna talk to us for a second about sort of what they're doing and why. And then we'll sort of let you get into, as Alex said, like super real world, not rehearsed at all, so.
So today, as our lesson, at the end of it, we gave the students a micro theme, a question to answer, and it's based on, from our curriculum, one of our guiding questions of what are some of the challenges of interpreting the past, and they had to build upon some experiences they'd used during the workshop. So we literally just grabbed a few, so I grabbed 10 off the top. I've not looked at them, I have no idea what they look like, but we're going to, as if this were our time, sift through and do our protocol.
And it is your time.
It is. This is a chance to do it. So.
All right, so now we make notes and they work.
Okay. All right, so
We're
look fors,
Specifically looking for the fact that the kids would identify writing.
prehistory, and that shift before writing and after writing, so,
You guys gonna make a no and a yes pile?
yes. Do you have these 5? 6.
Got it. 7.
So close enough, okay. So I had 2 that got it. I got 3 that were kind of the look fors, where we talked about not knowing scale because it is an image, perspective and bias and limited knowledge. And then I got 1 that was way off that concerns me.
Okay, so out of, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I had one that nailed it, no, that, I found that, they said that we were looking for writing, the artifacts didn't have any writing with them, so that person got it, but then I had everybody else that I just looked at, basically say, they essentially danced around it.
That's, yeah.
Like, it was tough to interpret because they were just looking at the picture, et cetera.
So out of my 5, no one specifically mentioned prehistory or pre-writing, but they all 5 mentioned you don't know what you're looking at. So I figure, just kind of basing on that and just kind of scouting some of these, it seems to be the general consensus of the 10 that I pulled. But I do have evidence, so I have some of the look fors.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that we're getting that too is I think like when we were asking this question, what threw them off specifically was like use your own experience and what we were doing. So I think a lot of the kids were like, I was looking at a picture and I couldn't see this or that, or I couldn't tell how big something was, or I think they were a little bit frustrated just because what they were looking at was an actual picture of an artifact as opposed to an actual artifact, and it's
And we didn't ask them to specifically mention how prehistory would have factored into their answer based on But I think that was somewhat of our design too with the question.
Because we had taken away.
Because we
Because
took away a
originally
chunk.
we literally said understanding prehistory, and we were
Mhm.
trying to get away from giving them the answer, so, I don't know. This though makes me think maybe we should have that, even though we have it in bold and underlined prehistoric.
They didn't make the connection as early in the year.
Right. That maybe we need to.
So that might be a teaching moment to come
Mhm.
back and look at your prompt and what's
Yeah,
being
but-
asked.
Because I think truly, I really do think that most of the kids would understand, like, I think at this point, the difference between prehistory and history. But I guess they just didn't pay attention to the prompt that was given to them in that specific moment. Because a lot of the kids, like, they seem to get it, but they're sort of dancing around like what we were specifically looking for.
Right. So I think change the wording. So looking at this though, that so many did not get it or didn't quite get it, thinking what we would do with, you had one that got it?
Mhm.
I had two, granted, we haven't looked at all of them, but if this is the theme, then,
So it may be worth going back and presenting them with the prompt that we gave them and saying, here was what our expectation was, here's what we wanted you to do. And talk about maybe why they didn't include that definition of prehistory or why that wasn't
Mhm.
mentioned. And maybe once we give them that, then give them a chance to see if they want to revise what they have currently written.
so give them that opportunity. Okay, what about the kids that didn't do it?
We can always keep moving them forward. I know the one website is at British Museum. We could let them look at some of the different artifacts, pick a few of those, and then talk about challenges that they could face, still interpreting what's there, where they come up with something. Because they did like to create their own narrative about what they saw.
And then do a comparison, but keeping in mind that the comparison is based on what experts believe, not what we know to be fact because of the writing.
Right.
Okay. I think that they would enjoy that with you. So we'll say British Museum.
If you're in the crowd.
Is that
It's a website that we
Okay.
use a lot, yeah. I'll put the link on there.
Okay.
It's got good information and it's verified information.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to step in. And like any good debrief, the first question is always, so how did it go? This is where you guys talk to us. How do you think this went?
Does this
few
fishbowl
minutes. Yeah, your discussion.
awkwardly, but.
Awkward.
Yeah.
What do you mean awkward? Yeah, 50
Sam,
people watching you.
Sam.
I'm a little sad that they didn't actually.
I know.
But I mean, you know, that's okay. It's what, 3 weeks into the school year though?
And we've only talked about prehistory for 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
And we didn't go over specifically like how to break down the prompt, so.
It's okay.
Okay, so a takeaway I'm hearing is that, okay, aside from the fact that this is kind of a weird situation with like adults watching you,
Yeah.
one takeaway is that we're not there yet, right? Okay, so how did this process help you determine that you're not there yet?
Being able to compare with a
Mhm.
common assessment to see how all our kids did, where we do slightly differences in our lesson, to
Okay.
actually see the end result and how we got there. I'm curious now to see all of it,
Uh-huh.
kind of the bigger picture.
Uh-huh.
I guess on.
Because you just did a
Thursday.
random sampling, which is fine, and
Yeah.
especially for the sake of time. But like you said, if it's a trend that you're already seeing, what are the odds that that trend's going to, keep on happening?
Right, I
It's
did just take the
probable.
whole class, you know.
Right, okay. So that was my next question, which is, what now? What next? Like, this is only 5 minutes, 10 minutes of a PLC conversation. If you had the whole 85 minutes or whatever, what would this look like moving forward, do you think?
I would want to analyze all of it because this question, this theme is going to matter the entire year. It's something they have to get. It's not something that you can, you have to prioritize it. It's a have to know, not a nice to know. So if this is the trend, then we're going to have to incorporate looking ahead into our next lesson. How can we revisit this and make sure that they get it and
Okay.
really understand it?
Intentional with
And
every
you,
lesson.
you gave this today,
Mhm.
right? So, happily, we looked at it
Yeah.
today,
Mhm.
right? So that this can be some immediate
Right.
impact that we can have with kids. Okay, so last question. You, with the exception of maybe Andy, you guys have been a part of the whole group content PLC when we do the very strict protocol, and there are reasons for that, and it takes a little while, and there are lots of people around the table. How did this feel different to you?
I like this better.
Feels more user friendly.
I think it's more applicable. Like, it's something that actually is relevant in the moment. Like, it's not something that I'm looking ahead 2 weeks or something that's actually already passed, but this was the work I had scheduled to bring. It's more relevant.
Okay. And even if, let's say you could only grab 15 minutes, to do, even just look at 5, samples each, it sounds like you have already a pretty good idea of what the rest might look like. So even if you go off on your own now and kind of look at your own and then come back and touch base later, like, that has given you some basis for things to look at. Sounds like, okay. Can we thank our fishbowl for... All right, so you've heard them debrief. We're gonna head back out to the room now, back to our seats, and we're gonna put a little bow on this for now.
Oh, it's
Okay, again, thank you, Alex and Andy and Sarah. I think I had prepped them pretty well, and I promised Alex it would be a safe environment. She said until I knew there was a video. So that was a last minute request when I realized I've got people who are going to miss this powerful work that we're doing, and exactly what we just saw, just a snippet of the power that our PLCs can have. And so, and Sarah was obsessing over the camera being right in her face, so I apologize. Andy, are you okay in front of the camera? You seem very relaxed as well, right? You have the bow tie on, you look marvelous. Again, thank you. I want to thank you again for that. But again, you see how our work with our PLC is continuing. We're not going to stop touching base and revising and providing one another with feedback. And so this work is going to continue into tomorrow when you meet with your school-wide ERD content groups. And so your noticing and wondering sheets are going to be part of yet another layer of debrief that your content leads will take you through. So make sure you bring that with you tomorrow. If there's further ideas that you're thinking about tonight after the faculty meeting that you want to include, please do, because you're going to be using your notes in your PLC tomorrow. Again, to reiterate, my commitment to you is that I want to be more visible during PLC time. I had started out with 6th grade, and I realized last week that I was staying too long because I only got through 2. I got through math and science, and so 50%, that's not bad. So if I go at that rate, it'll take me all year just to make one cycle through. But that's my commitment to you, because as Sarah showed in that pie chart, we've been doing a great job of the planning piece of that pie. But if we keep eating that piece of the pie and not touching on it, we have a lot of waste. And I think our waste that we have is not ensuring that our student learning is where it could be. So making sure that we really are analyzing our frameworks and then bringing in that student data piece, which was modeled so well today. So that, I just want you to know that that's going to be a look for when I come around and visit, is that there will be times when you're planning, and I expect that, but I also am expecting there to be some equal time analyzing our frameworks and analyzing student data. And if we look at Thursdays, that is a protected day, just to make sure that somebody's not chomping at you, wanting a piece of you for a meeting here, or a parent wants to meet with a certain group of teen leaders. It was just my way of giving you a little bit of that uninterrupted time. But we all know in no way can we get it all done in one protected day. So our work is going to continue as we have those chats before school that aren't official planning times, during our other planning times that aren't protected PLC time. We are always going to be working together because we are a PLC, and it's not an event. Remember, we talked about our PLC is something that is what we do. It's within us. So with that being said, know that it's just going to be continuing. And so my commitment to you is to be more visible. I'm hoping that I can help enter those conversations as we begin to hit all 3 high pieces of what a PLC, the pieces of a PLC. Now, we also had talked at mini retreat and also on teaming day about what we're loving is the whole funnel concept. We're really trying to make sure that all of these pieces of things that we do make sense and come together, and Sarah referred to the big bow. Well, another part of our puzzle piece to this is our ILTs, and we felt like that really fit nicely into the whole process of what we do in a PLC, because what we're doing is we're really doing action research based on what student data and our curriculum tells us is what's working, let's keep doing it, what's not, what can we do, what new strategies are we putting into place to make sure that students are learning. So that is inquiry learning, is it not? We're inquiring about what's before us. And so with that, we did some work at Mini Retreat. We talked about, some folks had given us feedback about, let's see if we can, if we want to, utilize those with our notes day. And so we're going to now move into ILPs and what's to come. So Sarah has the survey results, and we're going to share a little bit more about that. So if you look at our outcomes, number one is to lay that groundwork for our ILTs to work in our new understanding of that action research. And we did that at the beginning of the year because you guys were like, I need more information on what action research really is. And so Sarah did a nice job for backing us up and making sure that we really understood what that was and how to do it. And then the logistics, from teams, beginning establishing rapport, developing those inquiry questions, and then some sort of timeline. So Sarah? Oh, I forgot about this. I'm still, we looked at your feedback from that day that we spent together, and what I wanted to we're not going to be able to address everything just yet, but we will when we continue to address these throughout the year. But what I did love is some of the things that you shared. There were some statements that I wanted to share today, and then also some questions which we're going to address. And one of those, it was good to have a framework for action research. It will help everyone to have a better start to the process, and that's what I alluded to, is that we were wondering, like, kind of the cart before the horse. We weren't quite sure. We felt really was more compliant last year than really understanding. So we backed up and made sure that we brought clarity to it. And then the quote, I love the idea of connecting all of our PLCs, ILT, I shouldn't say PLC there too, that should say ERD, etc. All of it pulls together, growth goals, whatever, like Sarah said, it's acronym soup here, but towards one specific outcome. And instead of feeling like everything we're doing really didn't tie together. So that's our focus. And then this is feeling good. I'm excited to grow and cause growth. And again, these were all around the idea of our inquiry learning teams. And then some logistics that we had, and there were many of them. Can't answer all of them today, but we're going to start. And one of them said, I'm only at the point of wondering about grouping and the time frame. So we'll address that today. Only questions are logistical and pragmatic, which I believe are coming, so I feel good. Well, good. I want you to continue to feel good because they're coming today. And how will be paired with ILTs and teachers to build rapport and observe. And I love that whole piece about observe, because even though we're not addressing it today, when we begin to do our peer observations, that's just one more component of what we have to do that pulls all of these big picture pieces together. And so we'll begin to address that once we make up our teams and give you an idea of where we're going with our work. Now.
Yeah, and I really like how we keep going back to your all's input. And I know at the end of these sessions it gets a little old sometimes for us to say, now give us a little more feedback. And you're like, oh my Lord. But as you can see, we really do look at it, we really do use it and try to act on it as quickly as possible. So taking us back again to, even though we're now shifting into talking about inquiry learning teams, it's still the fact that our job is to study our impact on student learning, that everything has this through line. So I showed you the pie chart for PLCs and like the three main components. Well, this I guess is more like a honeycomb for inquiry learning teams, because when we look at all the different pieces that feed into it, it's not really like a cycle necessarily. You can dip in and dip out of different parts, but really it just is this sort of lots of different pieces that somehow form a whole. So we've got inquiry questions, we do some research, we do some classroom action with our actual kids, our real world students. We look at some data, we revise what we're doing, and we share and collaborate with each other. We go and we look at some people, we watch some kids, we watch some teachers. So all of these would be the essential components of an ILT, just like we had essential components of a PLC. So just two visuals for us to sort of continue to work from.
Then if you remember, we read the article, Embracing Action Research, before school started, and it had this graphic, this circular graphic to explain the process. And I want to give you a moment just to look at that and get that back in the front of your mind. Identifying the problem and envisioning success. Developing a plan of action. Collecting data. Analyzing and forming conclusions, maybe reporting some results, adjusting and beginning again, and then analyzing again, and then reporting again. And you have that its own little cycle there within the larger. What I heard was that a lot of people felt like, oh, okay, so that gives me some roots to work from. Like, oh, now I kind of get why we're doing this, or the process behind what we did last year, so that we can make this even more meaningful and impactful for kids. So we have some next steps, which we're going to start to accomplish right now. The first thing would be, if you have not joined the Professional Learning Google Classroom, don't do it right now. But when you leave here today, when you come back to school tomorrow, go join the Professional Learning Google Classroom, because that's where we will put lots of materials. Things are already there for us to use today if you've already joined, and if not, they'll be there for you to access later. We'll put the PD menu there. That's how you'll sign up for the professional learning sessions that you'll have, and it will be a great little one-stop shop place for all of us. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then I'm going to ask you to, and if you are on the Google Classroom, it is already loaded there. If you're not, you're going to need a blue sheet. We're going to take a look at the Inquiry Learning Team Planning Template. This will be your most important document as you work through your ILTs this year. I want to take just a couple of minutes to take you through this document and explain some of the components within it. And then we're going to get to the piece that you really want to get to, which is forming your teams and actually sitting down and talking. Yeah. And so they make a copy. Okay. Yeah. Remind me to say that before we break. Like, not now, but before we get into our teams. It's your job. All right, so let's take a look at the blue sheet and or what you have in front of you on the Google Classroom. So, you know how it's funny, like you start doing one thing and then halfway through, and like, let me tell you, an hour and a half through, you realize this is wrong. Like, I've totally screwed this up. So that's where I was in creating this document, because I first approached it as a timeline. I had the months, I had the check-in dates highlighted and like asterisked, and was like, woo, this is feeling really good. Until I realized that if I myself were to approach this type of template, it would feel very checklisty to me. It would feel very much like I had to put one thing in for every month and move on, which felt a lot to me like what we did, what I asked you to do last year. Not doing that anymore. So timeline is gone, monthly timeline is out. So talk about like totally crying as you hit the delete button and then starting all over, but here's where we are. Okay, so let's take a look at the progression. Use this planning template in tandem with the article Embracing Action Research, because that's where I cribbed a lot of the stuff. Okay, so first of all, we're going to need to know who's going to work with whom, and you will figure that out in a very few short moments. But then it takes you through the actual steps of this action research cycle, which is identify the problem. And then we've listed lots of different questions here for you to talk about with your group. Things that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily talk about if you were to just sit down and go, let's write some inquiry questions. Like, that's part of it. But there are also lots of other things to consider as you consider the problem that you're wanting to solve with this ILT. Then you'll notice that there's a space for action plan, where it talks about, okay, we've got the questions, we've identified what success looks like, we've identified our problem, but now what are the steps that we're all going to commit to taking, not just me, but me and all four or all three of my ILT team members. What am I going to do versus what are they going to do, and what are those strategies and techniques going to look like? And we're going to enter them here. And then on the back, it moves to collect data. So what is it that I need to look at and analyze, and why and how? And we're all going to agree on that. Will it be paper, like student work? Will it be an observation that you'll go and do in another teacher's classroom? Might it be, and this one is the one I really love, might you go and interview some other teachers and get some insight or impact on their thinking about your inquiry questions or your problem of practice that you're going to solve. Like, how cool would that be? It doesn't all just have to be like, oh, I tried this differentiation thing and here's how it worked, right? We can crack this wide open. Then it asks for analyzing data and forming conclusions. So now that we've decided on the data we're going to collect, we're going to take some time to look at it and see what we think it tells us. Not what we wanted it to tell us, but what does it really tell us? And then the final step would be to report your results. And that was a big question that we got last year, like, what's the reporting look like? And again, you're going to be a little uncomfortable with this because the answer to reporting your results is not going to be given. It's certainly not going to be given right now. Okay? Carrie's going to give you a little bit of guidance on that, but in terms of what this has to look like, I don't know that there is a right or a wrong answer at this point because it's going to very much depend on the work that you do with your team. We don't want to have to make you shove a square peg into a round hole if that doesn't fit. Okay? Now, you will notice at the bottom that it says evidence of team progress should be reported to Carrie by, and it gives you 3 dates, which we just sort of plugged in to say, here's when we need to sort of touch base, and Carrie needs to touch base with each team to kind of see how it's going. So before she talks to you for just a minute, one last thing about this document. It is electronic, so it's very much meant to be a living, breathing document. Now, if you want to work with it on paper, that's fine. Just know that you're going to have several versions of it as you update it. And that's no big deal. But that's why I would kind of suggest working with it in an electronic space so that you can go in and make changes and we can see how this thing has grown, and you can cross stuff out or you can highlight it and say, nope, decided not to do that. That didn't work. Now we're doing this. So it's very much a living, breathing document that you will enter into every time you and your group would touch base. And you can even touch base on this via email or via Google rather than having to sit down all the time face to face and do some of your work. Some of your work probably can be done virtually, depending on your purpose. Okay? So Carrie, you want to say something about the check-ins?
Yeah, and I just, if you haven't experienced the whole Google Doc and doing it together, I mean, in the privacy of your own home, it was pretty neat the first time that Sarah and I actually worked on the same document together. So that's powerful in that, and that it is. It's a living document. We want it to be useful to you. I can't stress enough that I don't want you creating a product because, or what you think I want. What I want to know is like Sarah said, the impact that it had. Or it didn't have it, and this is why we're changing it. Because the work that we're doing in our inquiry learning team is all for a purpose. It isn't just to be doing an exercise. It's because we believe in the whole inquiry process. It's because we have passion about topics that we feel like are relevant to the students in our classroom. And so where we started 3 years ago, I think it was with our differentiation and feedback and formative assessment. That was like our three-legged instructional focus. So it was guided, but you had choice within that. Now we're breaking it open. It just so happens that someone had morphed into the whole, can we tie it into notes day because we felt so passionate about those topics? Yeah, that's what it's about. It's the passion that drives you to make sure that you're giving the kids what they need. And it's neat when you have a colleague who can share that passion with you. So when you ask me, like, what does Carrie want? All I want to know is, what is your plan? What is your action? How have you implemented, and what impact has it had or not? Why or why not? And then what are next steps? So I even hate to even say student work or your observation notes from another teacher, because then I don't want to plant those seeds. Like Sarah said, the sky's the limit. Talk with your group. I think it will be natural as to what you're going to report. But again, I'm just kind of, you know how we did a fishbowl with Alex and Andy and Sarah? That's kind of like this. I just want to be, I can't be with you all the time when you're discussing this. And when I do, you usually, I'm the principal. It's just out there whether you consciously do it or not. You guys don't talk as freely as you do when I'm not around. So it just gives me a glimpse into the work you're doing, and I want to be able to support you.
So could the check-ins then just be based on revisions to this document and keeping you up to date and maybe attaching some supplementary documents that we want you to look at. Like that could be a check-in.
It could be.
Okay.
And, you know, and I, again, I want it to be useful. I also don't want it to be just hamming in something that really doesn't change from time to time, because that'll say a lot too. And invite me if you want my feedback or you want me to be a part of it. I'll be there as much or as little as I can. But I do want to understand your thinking.
All right, teams, two things. First things first. Groups of 3 to 5, because we learned last year any more than that doesn't work, and 5 is even pushing it, okay? So as we took your survey results, remember when we had you send it to us in the Google form, I compiled all those results. I'm about to show those to you, but just know that some groups are really large. So what's going to have to happen as we spread out here in those larger groups is y'all are going to have to kind of figure out a way to sort of narrow your focus a little. Like, well, you three really want to talk about adolescent development in Compass. You three really want to talk more about this idea of like passion projects in Compass. You two really want to, you know, whatever that may look like. Okay, so you're going to have to sort of use your own resources to kind of winnow those groups down a little bit, if that makes sense. And then finally, if you were someone who you felt like you had to pick a notes day topic when we sent out the survey, and the more you thought about it, you really kind of are gravitating towards someone else, come and see us and let's talk during this time. All right? So, here was the breakdown. You'll notice that take technology. We had Shake and Crowdis who just said, yep, tech, I'm in tech. Then we had several people who said tech but feedback. Then we had people who said tech but collaboration, okay? That may be the way that stands today, or like Shake and Crowdis may decide they want to join some of these other two groups. That's fine too, as long as we're not sort of pushing that 5-person limit, okay? So what we're going to do now is give you the rest of the time to get together, and by the time you leave today, we would like to either have this electronically or at least one hard copy per group to say, here are the names, and here's kind of our start at a topic. You're going to refine this much more as we go throughout the year. But at least, here's who's in the group, and here's the topic we're kind of thinking more about, like a specified topic, okay? Amy wants me to remind you that if you pull this up on the classroom, you need to hit make a copy, because you can only view it right now, and then you can save it, share it, send it to Carrie, send it to me, send it to your fellow group members. You can do whatever you want with it, correct? Okay. Questions? All right, so it makes sense to me that we have like tech and Compass over here, classroom management, RTI, Q4, PLC, how all that shaped up, and grading maybe over there. So find your groups and talk amongst yourselves.
What you can do with those right? So what you've got website, it looks like you're using various tools to collaborate.
You're not tied to these, by the way. If you want to do a little mingling, that's okay too.
We just did 7th grade. That's why we're like,
Just because it's not 5, we'll do 4. Because I'm going to,
Right now, we're
I already messed this up.
Yeah, and I was writing down, so we're just brainstorming what collaboration with technology is, and usually by using various tools, and then you were like, and then you also writing down examples of things like that are on like iPads or things that we could use.
so apps and websites.
So that's where we're at.
That's the whole reason I got it.
No, we would probably
It's a matter of we've those are all seventh graders. So they wanted to collaborate, and they were sitting in that group. Just because we were trying to make it two smaller groups. Okay, so that's okay. So like 4 and 5. I'm my own special folder.
It's not on my computer. It's not on
I bet it's not gonna pop up on it. I bet it's only gonna pop up.
email stuff doesn't pop up. It's on my regular.
You gotta, what's the, how many days have you gotta take and routine?
Well, you don't sync this thing, it's risky.
If we need to, we can do
Or see, I mean, for tennis stuff.
if we need to. If we feel like it's too
Have it to routine
On here or in my regular. How do I set that? Because I want to
they're doing
Our note-taking app, educational technology, educator technology.
I guarantee in my archive.
On your archives. He probably doesn't have nothing to say about that.
They emailed a thing only 3 days.
Oh Lord, now you think it's gonna crash. Yeah, I'm telling you,
I'm
it's
not
slow
going to
now.
bring pieces of that to
So now if you go to,
based on,
You gotta pull down. Teach him how to pull down. Hey, why is your, like, sleep light on? Your name boss, like,
Where's that?
it's used for this thing up. It's like, makes no noise. Yeah, that nothing thing.
I don't know. Is that supposed to be?
It doesn't really matter. It only affects your phone anyway. Oh, that Bluetooth? Yeah, you'll want that. Well, that's not really. You don't need that.
now comes your email, see?
so where do you go with that?
I already got that one. Oh, no, I didn't. Keep going. Give me more. Google for iPad. 5 great apps. 50, sorry. It's not the topic off the top of your head.
No, I search Twitter and blow up their inbox. You'll find out through the school year, you'll be like, oh dear God, she needs to quit.
Can I drag yours over to this?
Except all the ones that were unread. I'm just
What's the ones that were me?
unread. They're
Unread. I tried them over there.
That's good because say about something that might be interesting. That's me. I'm like, what's something? Because not about yours, just in general.
I am
Maybe
good.
we should focus on research.
Oh wait, we don't need this. Is the specific.
Maybe that's what we need to focus on.
Well, we're gonna do it.
No, of course you can.
We're gonna do it.
Yeah, no, I was totally thinking about something. So,
So maybe our okay, we have to write that down. Maybe we write it down.
We're writing that down.
Like just clear for a second.
Oh, we have to write a reflection. But I didn't like the one.
What do we do? Like I just
Hey,
I bought the cardboard one. Put my phone in it.
Mr. Todd and Dr. Shake. Okay. Inquiry questions. We're supposed to identify a problem. Identify a problem.
All right, we're looking at about 2 to 3 minutes to at least get names down for We Are Now a Group. And here is like a general idea of a topic that we are interested in. Okay, about 2 minutes.
So what's our topic? Tools of collaboration or best practice for technology collaboration?
So identify the problem. Yeah, I think that it would be
Identify best tools for collaboration
tools that are successful.
or not successful.
Identify tools, identify collaborative tools.
Technology.
So that's where we are. So how do we make that research?
Or whether it's effective.
Okay, we'll keep that in there. So we can identify collaborative tools that are pretty successful, and then we can have another one, right? So,
Because we don't feel like
So are we identifying the effectiveness of collaboration or the effectiveness of collaboration through technology?
Yeah, technology.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So, I mean, what's the effectiveness?
I can see hashing. I can see.
Well, that could be a cool, yeah, you can look at it that way.
In the class.
What would really great policy that everybody could get
Okay.
I see what you're saying.
There's one problem.
right, because it's not actually
How do you think it change? You make a proposal. Why don't you take some time to think
So
about
it says, what would success look like? What changes would we like to see? What strategies might we already need to try? So these are strategies.
There.
Google Classroom. These are strategies. Okay,
So then how do you take behavior?
Or do you come up with something else to do? Like, say, just create options.
there's another one that says, what might work better than what we are currently doing?
Let's get back to you. How about that? We'll stick with
Well, is that like being intentional with which kids you pair up to collaborate?
I don't think so. It's just, or are we focusing out? It just says what you're supposed to be talking about. These are
Okay, so we're going to ask you to put pens and pencils down, screens away, whatever. We've got just a couple of minutes. I took way too much time, sorry, so Carrie's going to kind of get us through to the end here.
All right, if you noticed on the agenda, and again, I hate to cut this great stuff short, but we also know that it's dinner time and our bellies are grumbling. The informational items, there were 2 great grant opportunities that I want to make sure. I'm just going to send those slides out to you guys via email. There's also, one of them is a McDonald's grant. It's not as Big Daddy as the one that Oldham County Schools Technology Department is putting on. That's a $50,000 grant. These are $500 grants. But we are getting grants answered all the time. We got those tall tables. Keely and Angela wrote a grant and got the tall standing tables last year. It can be done. So if you want one of those cards, it'll also tell you when I send you the slide information about that. Also, I don't know what I was thinking when I was giving professional your growth plans and your student growth dates in November. I'm like, that's way too late because we even did it in October last year and that was pushing a little bit. I was counting just school days, not weekends. So I revised and went back because we have to have it done within 60 days. Your new due date, and I'm sorry that I gave you a false impression of November, but that's October 17th for our PGP and our student growth goal to be in Sept. If you need a student growth goal refresher, I'm going to do one on the 12th. I'll send more information out about that in my slides when I follow up with the informational. But I also think that tomorrow's an early release day, and so we need to have a spirit day. And what better way than to have a new spirit shirt and a new lanyard. So back on the table, we have new lanyards. Please grab one. Spirit shirts are, you'll notice they're in all different sizes. I have several pieces of paper with all of our names and sizes. Guesstimate with what you are, but when you take yours, notice that the size that we have for you, you try to stay true to that unless it's totally going to be off the records and I messed up. Either switch with somebody or let me know and I'll try to get that figured out. But initial next to your name so I can make sure that I don't think Amy has a t-shirt when she really does. So that's all I have for you again. Thank you, thank you. Make sure that we get your either electronically.
Go to Google Classroom,
Thank
sign
you.
up, click on today's reflection, it will automatically come to us. So do your reflection sometime in the next day or so.
Totally forgot about that. I'll go through the reflection, guys. Those are important.
Okay, so.